what I wanted to start with was just kind of get everybody's take on the gravity of the situation, or at least your perception of it. Um, Before even you talk about like your business and whatever, and what you're doing from a training or rehab point of view, but I seem to get a lot of people um, either on one side of the spectrum, right? Like, so it's like, this is nothing, or holy shit, this is something. So I don't know what you guys are experiencing, but I've had a lot of people who are like, this is nothing, go to holy shit, this is something very quickly in the last few days. And even like I'm a little different. Like we went to Walmart 2 weeks ago and I bought $750 worth of canned goods and Mr. Noodles, right? So it was kind of hilarious. Like we used it as almost like a little fun thing for the family to do. Like, okay, kids, you go find like, some noodles and, we'll go find some light bulbs or whatever. And so we did it. The cart was full. We're like, holy shit, $750. And then we just like bought a whole bunch of Rubbermaid containers, put it in there, socked it away. Cause like they keep telling us there's going to be an earthquake out here. So we're like, whatever, we'll go camping if we don't, and then what I did is everything seems to have an expiry date or a best before date. So I made a spreadsheet because I'm a bit of a nerd. And so, I have alerts on the spreadsheet that'll tell us like, okay, August 2020, you got to eat the canned tomatoes or whatever. So got that out figured out. And then we just socked it away. And I'm like, okay, great. So that was kind of fun. And then I thought it was a joke. And I think I posted on social media. People were like, you're nuts. Right. And now I look like a genius, apparently. So, but yeah. So, Rob, let's start with you.
All right.
What do you think? Is this bad? Is this?
I think it has the potential to be really bad, and I'll give you a statistic, and that's why it could be bad. So I think the entrance with us was JFK Airport. It's an international airport. New York, is there, and so you have over 8 million people in New York City. You have 668,000 hospital beds. If this thing just spread wildly, and 20% of that, let's just knock out the 80% that could stay home, self-quarantine, and they'll be okay. And then you have the 20%, which are the age risk, which have cardiac and pulmonary problems, right? Well, still 20% of 8 million is 1.6 million. You have 668,000 hospital beds. Who are the million you're choosing to leave in the street? If it got to that point. And that's what I think the concern is. The concern with this thing is the unknown. Is it just going to fizzle out like the influenza? Is it going to stick around? Not enough tests for it. So right now, I think in the state of New York, we have last I looked at it, it was between 500 and 600 cases. And I think only one death, which is probably too much, right? But what if you had 20,000 people in New York City, or even 100,000 people in New York City walking around contaminated? So you can look at it in two ways, right? When we finally get the tests, I personally would rather know there's another 100,000 walking around because they're identified and you could do something about it. But if this jumped to 100,000 people, are you going to create even more hysteria? And so all these scenarios, I think it's serious enough. It's serious. I'm taking it seriously. I am. The argument against this that I've heard more often than not is that in 2009, we had the swine flu, 80 million worldwide, 500,000 deaths. But, you had a little bit more definitive answers with the swine flu than you do with this. So that's why everybody has such a concern. It's the unknown.
Yeah, and you were saying, I don't know if it was a friend or a client or something, somebody wanted to go get a test, but you have to exhibit a certain amount of symptoms before you can get a test.
Now, due to the limited availability of tests, and let's talk about the testing. We may have dropped the ball on that. I don't know. I mean, I am not the Surgeon General of the United States. I don't know, but you also hear that the testing that occurred in South Korea and the testing that occurred in China was only 50% accurate, and those test kits weren't approved by our FDA. So if that is true, And that's, if that is true, what are you going to do? You're going to use those kits anyway? I don't know. Apparently that we have the ability to get kits now, and those numbers are increasing. But with the limitation of kits available to test, you can't just walk into a hospital and say, I don't feel good. I mean, you're going to have to display significant symptoms for the utilization of a kit, right? So that it's quote unquote maybe not wasted, because everybody would be walking through the doors. And don't forget, I give you a number of over 8 million people. That's New York City alone. I don't know what the number is for the state of New York. And I think Washington has the most cases. I think New York's number 2, Massachusetts is number 3. And I think New Jersey's number 5. So in the Northeast, we have a significant, compared to the rest of the country, we have significant numbers. But still, is 600 out of 10 million, rumor has it that they're talking about closing down New York City. I mean, they're going to extremes. And by closing down New York City, Long Island Railroad, which takes people from Long Island to New York City, they'll start on a Saturday schedule, which is less trains. The whole thing with this is, as you can imagine, and you all know, is to not have congregations of large people in small places, arenas, religious houses of worship, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So keep the people off the trains, keep the people, send people to work from home. Deutsche Bank last Wednesday, sent home 7,000 employees to work from home. And I don't even know if there was someone found to be positive at Deutsche Bank. This is what's going on. So if all those things that go on, obviously it's serious enough. I don't think it's Armageddon. I think we'll get through this. I think we'll have a tougher time recovering financially. That'll take much longer. If we're not in a recession, we're close to it. And you get out of recession in 6 months, you get out of recession in 6 years. But I think we'll get through this. I just think they're trying to figure out where the spike is or how to prevent a spike, level it off, and then after you have the leveling period, then you have the decline. But to go full circle, the reason why people are chaotic and the reason why everything's going through extremes is because simply of the unknown. Don't know how to treat it. We have tests for it, but not enough. And it's something that has never been seen before.
Yeah, no, it's crazy, especially in New York City. So, and everybody, just if you've joined in, I'm just getting people sort of personal accounts of what their perception is, what they've seen, what they've heard. Tommy, Christian, you're in and near a big city. What are you seeing, like in the Chicago area? How are people reacting?
I think there's just a lot of unknown. Just like Rob was saying, I mean, none of us really know, and it seems like every day, like another shoe drops, and just like the other day when NHL closed their season, and then March Madness, and just then all of a sudden all the schools started closing one after another, and so I think the whole population is just like all of us, like a little bit reeling. There's a lot of uncertainty, a lot of fear. I think Illinois I've been checking the Illinois Department of Public Health every day. There was like 62 cases as of yesterday. And my wife's a pediatrician, and they expect those numbers to quadruple kind of on a almost daily basis until there's some sort of leveling or understanding kind of what all of the measures are doing. So I don't know, there's a lot of fear. I think a lot of the closures and just being proactive, I think it's probably it's what we have to do and see how effective it is. But yeah, it's just, it's just quiet. I'm kind of thinking like, what are we going to do now? Just for me, thinking about my business come Monday, like, what should we be doing? We have high school coaches asking us to offer things for their athletes to keep training as of last week. But kind of where we're at now, I don't know if that's the right thing or, kind of what we do. So I appreciate you, Derek, kind of having the idea to have this today, this discussion, because I'm really interested in what everybody's perspective is and kind of how
Yeah.
you guys are viewing it.
And we'll talk a bit about the business side and the training side. I just want to get a few people's kind of,
Yep.
where you are, what do you see? Like Clint Hazen, are you able to talk? Clint's in China, so I wanted to get his interpretation. Clint, can you hear me? Okay. Clint? No? Okay, we lost Clint, but Clint was posting on Facebook from, I think he's in Beijing. Anyway, so we'll get Clint to talk soon, but I want to get his. But Brian Miller, what's your take on all this? You're in a bit of a unique situation too, being part of an academy. You don't have to speak about their policies or whatever, but what are you seeing?
I would say it's a lot of changes, a lot of uncertainty. The state of Maryland is one of the few states where all the schools, grade schools anyways, they are closed for the next 2 weeks. So that's 2 weeks of homeschool and home training for our kids. And the Naval Academy has followed that. No school for the next 2 weeks. Will be online courses, which a lot of universities are following that suit. The one memo that we got yesterday that I believe, I'm not really sure if it applies to me or not, but anyone involved with the military is not allowed to travel outside their local area within the United States until May 11th. So I believe that applies to me. I've not gotten confirmation one way or the other, but not just international travel now, but as far as military families and military personnel, that's domestic travel. So that's a huge, kind of change for a lot of families right now.
Yeah, no, again, Tommy was saying, every day we see something new or hear something new, and like there's a next level. So it's a little, I guess, freaky, right? Like, I wake up, I'm like, okay, the sun's out, right? So let's start there.
Right.
But yeah, I just assume it's going to keep escalating. Like they're talking about lockdowns in the US now, like actually
Yep.
locking place down. And I got text messages from my friend in Milan. And every time he sends me a text, you think, I'm hoping he says, oh, it's getting better, but it seems to be getting worse in terms of what they're doing. Like he doesn't leave his home. If he needs anything, he gets a package mailed. Maybe it's from Amazon or wherever, and then they wipe down the package. They wipe down everything. They bring the box in the house, kind of thing. So it's pretty dire there. So I usually get the firsthand message from him before it hits the press, and I'm like, oh, geez. So I'm a little depressed, a little longer than most people. But Ryan Banta, what are you seeing, as an educator and with schools and all that? I know my kids' schools, they're off for 2 weeks too. But I pulled my kids out a couple of days early because I'm like, right, because the school wasn't doing anything. But Ryan, what are you seeing?
Well, I would say it's an inconsistent response. If you're following the infection tracker or whatever, in Missouri, we had, we still have one of the lowest numbers, but part of that's because just the lack of testing in general. So if you look at Nebraska has a lot. Well, the reason why Nebraska had a lot is because they had testing. For us, we could see kind of the universities shutting down and then the high school shutting down. We still have not had a statewide response. On Friday, the governor basically said he's going to leave it up to local municipalities. And I think one of the things is that every decision you make has consequences. And so I think a lot of these leaders of school districts and our governor and these people are like, well, I don't want to be the one who shuts everything down and spikes panic. And I think the unknown cost, well, not so unknown, but if you do close down all the schools, the concern is, I guess, why they haven't done it yet is, well, who's going to take care of all the kids? And for me, it's not a big deal because I'm a high school teacher. So I'm going to stay home with my kids and I'm going to do everything I can to keep my wife at home too, because she can work remotely. But for a lot of other people that have children, especially elementary school children, that burdens the society in a different way. but it's really inconsistent. No one wanted to make the call. Everyone's like kind of limping along, like, all right, we're going to continue to keep doing this. How are we going to handle this? And finally, we had one high school school district in the St. Louis area that said, we're shutting this thing down. And so we went from, hey, we're going to see what's going to happen over spring break, to, hey, we're going to meet next Wednesday, to, hey, all the superintendents today are meeting at like 5 o'clock. They had not canceled practices. I was talking to a bunch of other coaches in my school district about spring break practice, because pretty much everybody in the St. Louis area is on spring break. And I'm like, are you guys still in practice? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, I'm canceling, because I just don't want to be the guy. And it's not so much, the worry of the kids from this virus. Obviously, it seems like it's a super low percentage for everybody under 24 years old. But anybody who's a faculty member, staff, or has a parent or a grandmother at home, or somebody who's, got some issues. Like my dad's got type 2 diabetes. The way I eat, I probably have it too. I just, I'm younger. And that's a problem with this disease as well, or this virus as well. So it's interesting to see the inconsistent response, the fact that everybody's kind of trying to be hopeful. And for high school seasons, we're very much in limbo. What I figure the schools are going to do is we're going to wait till April and then reassess, as opposed to canceling the spring sports seasons outright. My hope would be is that maybe like China, we can, work our way through it, but they locked everything down. We haven't done that, even though that's going to happen, and we don't have an authoritarian government. So I'm very concerned as to, what is the American people's response going to be to that? I'm more worried about people than I am the virus.
Yeah, it's funny how everybody's kind of waiting around and going, okay, well, what are they going to do? Like, or are they going to shut this down, or is the government going to take leadership? And a lot of the time, I think I've just said, well, we're staying home. Like individuals, I guess, have to make that decision too. Ryan Reynolds, you want to chime in a bit? You're in pro sport. What have you been told? Like, what is the pro sport perspective? Are they just kind of like, okay, whatever, this is what we do. We're going to shut down. Like, have you been given any sort of information about like, what's the plan, or is it just kind of wait and see too?
I think initially the NFL just kind of had team by team could decide what you wanted to do. We basically had a semi shutdown for 14 days. So really there's just one person in each department as far as equipment, athletic trainers, and then weight room. So, and we're limiting the hours from basically 8 to 11. They have to be out of the building. Then they come in every single day and basically disinfect, spray the whole room, spray the whole building down once everyone's out of the building. So they do that for 14 days, and then we'll reassess after that.
And there's protocols around hand washing, hand sanitizer when athletes or people come in and use the equipment.
Yeah, so there's not many guys in right now, so you try to confine them to, you're on this rack, and then we basically just wipe the bar down and everything they touch as soon as they leave. There's myself, I'm the one in the weight room now, so, and then there's 2 janitors that come in right behind each guy and does that. So
Wow. And so it's just kind of a 2-week and then we'll see kind of thing.
that was our last meeting. Yeah, so like I said, it's pretty slim pickings across the NFL right now in this part of the off season anyway. So it's not a ton of people in the building. So
yeah,
mostly
wow.
It's scouts and things, and they have changed things on their end too, so they're not there as much.
Yeah, I could see it being an online draft, eh? Like, that seems to be where it's heading.
Yeah, I think so.
Not have people gather. So, and if anybody else wants to chime in, sorry, I'm just calling on people I know their situation, but if there's anybody else who has a unique situation that we should hear about, I'd love to hear it. Clint, can you hear us? So Clint has been infected, I guess. I don't know. But let's talk a bit about work situations, like Tommy alluded to it, like his business. Obviously, some people work for other institutions. Rob, what is your take on it from a business operator's point of view, and what are the implications of what's happening, and what action can you take? Let's see. Sorry, we're just gonna. There you go. Sorry.
So basically, we're a healthcare business. We've really limited our performance center, but we have to treat patients. Those numbers are declining, understandably, whether the concern of people receiving the virus, being in an environment, whether it's someone saying, I don't hurt that much, I don't need to go to physical therapy, et cetera. And then you have your post-ops that have been pretty consistent. I think when you're in the facility, I don't think there's or facilities, there's overwhelmed panic of people. People seem to be pretty calm. I think you just have to wait and see what happens. I think if you're in any business, you're going to have to wait and see the economic effects of this. So for instance, you may be, we're not IBM, but we're a substantially sized business. And it could come down to asking requests of deferral payments to whether it's landlords or companies that provide support if things got really tight in any business, right? But then how do the landlords pay their mortgage? Are the banks going to reprieve them for a period of time? But then what funds are happening in the bank? And so you can see how this could be an economic downhill concern. Right? I don't want to say disaster, but concern. And so with us, it's business as usual. If numbers go down, one thing I think you can't do is you can't panic on this. I think there's going to be, at least in the healthcare industry, there's going to be a rebound effect. All right. So if you're a primary care doctor and you start letting some of the primary care physicians who work for you leave, or in our situation, if you're a physical therapist, we start letting physical therapists go. I think you have to do the best you can to weather the storm. That's not our intention, so I'll make that clear, because when this is over, everybody who has put off their elective surgeries, everybody who's put off going to the dentist, everybody who's put off getting any type of medical care, you're not only going to have the usual and customary appointments made, you're going to have a rebound effect from the 3 to 4 months that everybody avoided medicine, period. And so you're going to need to have the staff to be able to support that influx of business. And so the key to me, at least in healthcare, is finding ways to hold on as your financial situation deteriorates. Things you could do is you could have people, utilize and also obviously the concern is, as we say in training, do no harm, right? We don't want to have people exposed unnecessarily to the virus. And so we've taken precautions there as well for both our patients and our employees. So I want to make sure I'm clear on that. We're just talking about, because you brought it up, I'm talking about the finances. I'm not ignoring the care of our patients or our staff. And so if you can weather the storm, so to speak, you'll be prepared for that influx. And I think by year's end in the healthcare business, people will be just fine or better than before. If you look at the first quarter or the second quarter of the year, you're probably going to have a terrible quarter or terrible quarters because of what's going on now. So, that's my opinion. I think you just have to make sure that your staff is not at any risk. And with regards to the facilities, we have people coming in, professionals coming in, cleaning our facilities, so that we get rid of anything that may have been lingering. We provide all the care we can to the patients, advising them, they come in, they have to sign in that, do you have any of these symptoms? There's a checklist. If they do, we won't see them. We have them sign out. Do you feel any symptoms on the way out? Everybody hand sanitizes, washes their hands. We clean down, as Ryan said, we clean down equipment after every patient. We're doing everything possible to address this. As far as an administrative situation, we're sending as many people like billers, that type of thing, to work from home. We do not have our executive and management team meeting as a group, because if one person is sick, they can infect the rest of the senior management team, and then who's running the business. So meetings are either going to, either Skype, conference call, whatever. And you take those types of precautions. To get back what I was saying, in the worst scenario, you can furlough your employees, right? Where you have a decrease in pay for a period of time, 1 week on, 1 week off, 1 week on, 1 week off. This way you can keep your employees. Someone could fill in if someone does get sick, and it's an easier way if you start to get to such financial distress, that at least you can keep your whole staff and make adjustments by having them defer some of their salary at this time and make up for it maybe at the end of the year. So there's a lot of things you can do to be creative, but right now it's just, how do I weather this situation? Both treating patients and the financial implications of business deteriorating.
Yeah, those are some good points. Thank you, Rob. Tommy, are you thinking about that in terms of your business and weathering the storm at this point and taking measures to just get by this at the very least, even though we don't know what the end game is?
Yeah, I'm just kind of contemplating, just the gathering group size and kind of the model of our business where, we have like athletic group training and private training, and feeling like shifting into more of the private training situation where we can decrease the numbers. We have 10,000 square foot facility we can spread out. Maybe that's an interim measure. It's possible that everything could just be shut down, and just from the state level, and in that case, just in the last couple of days, thinking about like, what can we do, even just online, is there a way that we can create a revenue stream and help, serve our clients, but also like, having a business to run. I have payroll I'm committed to, and we have some reserves, but depending on how long it goes, like what Rob's saying, it's helpful to kind of hear some of those scenarios and possibilities, because that it could come to that if we can't create revenue somewhere else just to make some ends meet. So I'm just thinking about it, and also like thinking that maybe in this time there could be a blessing in disguise on the other side of it, because I do believe we'll get through it. Like Rob said, I don't think it's Armageddon, but it's obviously very serious. But on the other side of it, are there things that we could do when I have to pay coaches anyway that are on a guaranteed salary, to be able to, just put some things in place that will help us when we're on the other side. Whether it's creating more like video content, programming that we could use as, maybe offsite, consulting or program design, and just, I'm thinking through some of those scenarios just of where I could pay people to still do work, even though it doesn't bring in revenue right now, that it might help down the road.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, have you, like, again, Rob can even chime in on this, but as a business owner, have you thought of like, okay, what are the opportunities I can derive from this? Like what, moving forward, like you said, maybe we retool in some fashion so that we're a little more resilient moving forward. Have you thought about that?
Yeah, I mean, I have just from the standpoint of, the remote training situation that we're going to kind of be stuck in anyway. My brother-in-law lives in New York City, and he called yesterday, and he's out at the park with his son and asking me about his form and speed and asking for advice and ideas. I'm like, hey, do you think
you could pay?
Yeah, I'm not going to charge him yet, but just thinking about like, and then also thinking like, well, is there an aspect of like doing some of this stuff just pro bono for a while with people in our area? Cause maybe that's the right thing to do if it's short term, but then in the long term, we have to grow and protect our business as well. At some point we have to charge for these things. So
yeah.
Hey, Derek.
Yeah. Rob?
Just to follow up what Tommy's saying, so I could tell you some of the initiatives we're taking. So first thing is, as you start to slow down, and I think Tommy's onto something that's very astute, all the things that you always wanted to do, but you never had the time to do, like with us at a company, redo our policy and procedure manual. As Tommy's saying, maybe make videos and things like that, so later on that may bring a financial benefit to him. Anything that you've always wanted to do, but you never had the time to do it, I would initially start having your staff do those things because though they're not revenue producing now, whether it's for compliance in a larger type business or whether it's a revenue stream later on, it'll pay off. Now you can't do that forever, right? Because you need to have revenue stream. So things we're doing, we're looking to do in the second quarter, which is, April, May, June, we were going to roll out telehealth. Okay. And telehealth's going to be pretty big in this situation. So as Tommy said, maybe do some, not that he has to be coaching and watching, though that's possible, right? Someone's technique, but he can provide advice and programming over the internet. And that's what we're doing now. We've accelerated that by 1 quarter. We know which insurance companies will reimburse it. And then as things deteriorate, our therapists, half their schedule in the day will be telehealth. The other half will actually be hands-on treatment for the patients that do show up. The other thing that we're going to do, and some therapists, it's going to be optional, is we could do home care, right? And so if someone does not want to come to your facility, they've assured you that they do not have the virus, they've been tested or whatever it may be, then maybe they would be up to a one-on-one treatment session and send our therapists to the clinics, to their homes for one-on-one treatment. And so those types of things in that order, right? Getting things done that may help the future, telehealth, those types of things are the things you could start to think of in the industry, whether it's performance training or healthcare that maybe help you, weather this storm. So those are the things that we're looking at.
Yeah, and that just seems like a smart thing to do. Like, identify what can we control. And I think it's kind of a good transition into the training piece. And David Stone had brought up his experience with the NCAA. David, you want to comment on that and what measures you're taking?
Yeah, so we're actually a D3 program in this way. What that means is we've gone into an off-season protocol. So for us, that means no contact, no actual coaching in person. So we've essentially gone to recommended workouts. So I get to program, I don't get to actually do any coaching. So if I'm a triple jumper, I just get workout written. I don't get any actual technique work. Personally, I think this is going to sink some teams for next season. And I think for other teams that have built in a culture of training and a culture of putting in the work, it's going to help us grow a lot. So I know at the NCAA D1 and D2 levels, they're in a dead period, but they're going to be able to go back to their off-season protocols, which has strength and conditioning coaches involved, which has safety measures. So you can have safety for specific events. You can have safety measures in there. So a pole vault coach can go work on pole vault technique because it's a dangerous event if there's not a coach there to help. But essentially, from my standpoint, I'm hands off until next November. So I have a team that's out there and they're all at home. They're all kind of doing whatever they can do to stay fit. Some have access to facilities, some don't. So what we end up doing is we write about 4 workouts a day. We write if you have a track, if you don't have a track, if you have a weight room, if you don't have a weight room. If you're stuck in your basement and you can't do anything, this is how you train. So we do a little bit of everything. Yeah,
that's a good point. It's like a contingency plan. It's not just like this is what you do. You got to work under circumstances. Yeah.
Yeah. At our level, we don't keep people on campus. So what ends up happening is, you have one athlete who goes home and their parents pay for a gym membership, and another athlete who goes home and, they live somewhere where it's bad weather and their parents don't pay for a gym membership. And they say, well, all I have is, I have a couple milk cartons filled with water in my living room, and that's what I have to lift. So we have to write for everybody and kind of work from the lowest common denominator up.
Yeah, very interesting. Brian Miller, have you guys come up with some strategies, alternatives for academy athletes and what they're going to be doing over the next little while?
To my knowledge, we have not. I think there's a whole lot of discussions going on, and I think the time for that it's going to take some time because we have to go through the NCAA, we have to go through the Patriot League, we have to go through the AAC League that our football team is in. And then we have the Naval Academy, and then we have Big Navy itself. So we have a whole lot of hoops to get through to get to a point where we get to a conclusive answer. So that information has not come down the chain of command to me, so I'm not sure how we're going to handle that with our athletes as far as training per se. I know this is it's kind of good and bad. The athletes that we do have, they're all very alpha driven people to begin with. So I don't know what's better, to give them something to do or not give them something to do. Because they're always itching to go do something. I mean, we'll finish like a 2-hour workout, and then the next thing I know, when I'm driving home that night, they're running around the yard, doing a mile and a half run. So we have to be careful what we do or don't give them to do, certainly. But as far as those exact answers, I don't have them yet. The couple of guys that I've been training, and that Derek, you've been kind of helping me with for our pro day, their training that I oversee is really up in the air, because I don't know when that day is going to be rescheduled for them. But I think the big point that I want to make, it's not so much financially driven, but this is probably the best way for me to really assess how good of a teacher, how good of a coach I am. Because now I have to place these workouts in their hands with their own autonomy. Have I done a good enough job teaching them what these exercises really are? What's the why behind them? Have I done a good job coaching them on, so they can determine what's a good rep, what's a bad rep? This looks good, this is not good. And then have I given them enough strategies to solve the problem? Okay, this was wrong. Okay, why was it? Have I done a good enough job teaching and coaching to remove myself from the equation? That's always my mindset as far as coaching. So for me, going through this crisis that we're in, self-reflection for me as a teacher and a coach is going to be amplified because of the situation. And that's kind of how I'm evaluating what I'm doing with these guys the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, those are good points, especially since you don't know how long this is going to go on and where the light at the end of the tunnel is. So, I mean, I assume you're going to have to evolve your approach to some degree too.
Absolutely, I will. Given the schedule that these couple players that are training for pro day have had, there's been days when I haven't been able to be there. So they've already had a little bit of experience without me being there, and they know how to manage that with using their phone. They also know what I want them to film and send to me and share with me. And I've done it enough with them where they can almost predict the feedback I'm going to give them on what I'm seeing from them. I feel comfortable with their running and their jumping, certainly in volumes and intensities. Managing, their lifting within the weight room. Yeah, that's stuff that I would definitely reconsider making changes to. Yeah.
Ryan Banta, what are you doing for younger athletes? Are you in any communication? Have you sent anything out? Is it just kind of up in the air? Are they just young and adaptable and they'll just do something and they'll get better? Ryan, you got it?
Yeah, I can hear you. So to piggyback off of some of the ideas that other people have already spoken about, I did post on Twitter that I'm going to go day by day. I sent out my entire season plan to my athletes, but to them, when they got that, they're like, holy cow, what is this? 100 pages and a bunch of different, workouts, and some terms maybe they didn't know. So I made the decision, basically yesterday, that I'm going to, live stream kind of the discussion of these are the workouts. Here are the links to the videos that I'm discussing, so you can see other people doing these things, the access that you have. Currently, I haven't told my athletes that we are not practicing next week. I wanted to get through the governor's speech and the president and see where everybody's at before I made a decision, and especially with the other people in my school district, because we got 5 high schools in my school district. But as things have continued and you can see things locking down, basically yesterday I was like, all right, I'm going to make that choice. I'm going to do it, after church on Sunday, and, let everybody know what's up and make sure that we have in our group chat and our Remind 101 that we get the word out, and then explain to the athletes that I'm going to be live, streaming this, and it'll be posted on YouTube to get, the word out of what we're going to do. Because, honestly, if they're on their own property, just like Coach said from, the D3 level, we're basically going to have 4 different workouts. Do you have a cardio machine at home? Are you stuck in your house? Do you have access to the track? Right now, everybody has access to the track if they want to, and they practice social distancing. If the kids want to go out and do that, that's on them. I would suggest probably doing more stuff, at your home and not grouping up in large groups, which is one of the things I've told the kids, because it's not really so much them getting sick as them getting their relatives sick and things like that. But there's a lot of things you can do at home in terms of jumping and calisthenics and things like that. So when we're building these things and having these discussions with our athletes, that's the way that those workouts are going to look. And I'm going to go day by day, every day. I'm going to get on and basically say, okay, today this is what, we were supposed to do. And here is the plan B, C, and D based around our original plan that you can get done at home, and try to get as many of those things you can get done without putting yourself at risk from an injury or, just simple things that we normally have to worry about as a coach beyond the virus. And then, of course, practicing, being safe and social distancing and things like that. I've told my athletes, I said, if they give us a season, even if it's like 2 or 3 weeks at the end of May, the team that has the most driven folks, the ones that are the most responsible, the ones that are most driven to continue to stay in shape, are going to be in a position that's, at their advantage. So let's be the team that's going to be the most ready. And if we come back, obviously the training, if we come back in late April, early May, the training is going to be very, very different. We're basically going to have to restart a lot of the things that we would do in the first couple of weeks of the season, which makes sense anyway, because the state championship is typically at the end of May. So we'll be in a quote unquote peaking phase, if you will. And so we'll just restart that and just try to get them sharp and work more on technique than energy system development, and fatigue them, because we don't want anybody to get hurt in that limited amount of time that we might have. The really unfortunate thing for us is that we were pretty much the number 1 or number 2 team in the state coming back this year. And I coach women or young ladies, so you can kind of predict where you're going to be with them a little bit more than the dudes because of the maturity jump. And it really stinks to miss out on the, probably our first state championship since 1985 at our high school. But it is what it is, There used to be a joke, Banta versus the weather, and now there's probably going to be a hashtag Banta versus the virus. So we'll see, and we'll just try to keep our spirits up. And every day I'll be getting online and trying to do my best to coach remotely.
Yeah, and I want to talk a bit about like use of technology, and I'm sure Rob's going to take a couple of computer courses, learn how to use a computer now that he has this extra time. But
That's why I have an IT department, Derek.
but I wanted to see if PJ, can you talk a bit about your circumstances and what you're dealing with right now? Oh, sorry, I'm just going to unmute you there. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm in France now, and we learned about the confinement only yesterday, although we were expecting it, because Italy was in the same situation 1 week before. So I'm coaching sprinters, which are leisure athletes, and throwers who are professional athletes. So what we will do is do like 4 workouts a week for the kids, the sprinters at home. And for throwers, we have a landscape with a ring where we can throw. For the weights, we have a few weights at home. We have to be creative. We have to be also very careful, because the projections here, I don't know where you all guys you are in the world, but for here the projections are very bad regarding health. And I'm not only talking about lethality, but the pneumonia and the consequences, the sequels of it. The projections are between 10 and 20 million people affected by pneumonia in France. So that's a serious concern. So we have to stay trained, keep fit, keep psychologically well, staying at home for a long time. it's 15 days officially, but it's not going to be 15 days because in China, only 3 weeks after the detection of the first case, they're starting the confinement, and it's still going on today. It's getting better after 6 or 7 weeks, so it's not going to be better or faster in France or anywhere in the world. So I'm thinking about 1 month at least or 2. So the main thing is to keep them away from any contact out with the virus. Maybe they already have, and then mainly to occupy them because they will have to stay at home, and that's the main difficulty, to not be done crazy.
Yeah, I mean, those are really good points because I read something about how they're worried that if people do get the lung infection, that there are long-term consequences. It's not just you get sick and, oh, okay, then you'll get better. It might be there might be some permanent issues around, the damage to the lungs. And is it more important, in your opinion, to just isolate and contain people than even to worry about the training at this point?
Yes, the first thing I told my athletes are the projections, because there are a lot of informations on websites and on TV. So I rely on the World Health Organization and the epidemiologists in France, and the information we have from China, because I used to coach in China and I still have close contacts with the ex-colleagues and scientists there. So the main thing is to stay healthy and also to be good at home. Sometimes it's not easy to be 24 hours, 24 with your family or your wife or or kids. It's not easy. So I give them some guidelines, not guidelines, but tips for daily life. And it's very important because we are going to enter into an hygienist area now, and it's very important that the kids have good habits, like they eat at proper time, they dress up, if they work, they have to work on certain places on their room, and not to mix up everything, to eat correctly, no junk food maybe sometimes, but those kind of things are as much important as training, because training is secondary but very important to the well-being of the athletes. And for the guys prepare for the Olympic Games, we have to stay in the belief that they will be organized. If not, there will be a big crash, I think, psychologically, because we've been training a lot already. So that those kind of things that as a coach have to take care first before which day we are going to do high intensity or low intensity or those kind of things. And that was interesting to hear you guys about what's your plans.
Yeah, because I mean, it does really come down to, again, how long, what's important. And it might just be like you said, like, okay, let's eat properly, let's sleep properly, let's do something. But let's certainly avoid getting infected, because it's interesting talking to you. And if you talk to somebody in Europe, I think the level of concern and the action being taken is a lot more significant than maybe North America right now. And maybe we're behind. But,
yes.
Do you think that's the case right now? Like if you go from China to Europe to the USA and Canada,
yeah,
very different.
We were in the situation where people didn't believe they were thinking that China was faking something or overreacting, but China is not going to pretend anything now. And they've been really transparent. It's not like SARS in 2003. They are now very transparent and overly transparent. It was like they were giving everything, all the RNA code to all the scientists over the world, all the information, counting the patients and stuff. And it was just a matter of days because they were telling me to stay confined at home like 3 weeks ago. And It's only now. So get ready, guys.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great message. Thanks for offering that, PJ. Does anybody else here feel this sense of urgency? Like, does somebody want to chime in what they're doing? I mean, I don't think it's as simple as going to the track and putting somebody in lane 1, 4, and 8 for social distancing. I think it's much more significant. Somebody else want to jump in? Anyone?
I'll jump in for a second.
Okay.
Now, I think we have to be concerned enough with regards to what's going on. I think in North America, we're learning what's happened in Europe, and that's why we have the confinement of international flights, likely domestic flights, as I stated earlier, maybe the shutdown of New York City, et cetera. So as unfortunate as it is, we have the advantage of learning the lessons of China and Italy, okay? So I'm not convinced. I'm not saying it can't happen, but it'd be a shame if we didn't learn from those lessons and the United States and Canada North America wound up in the same situation. So I don't want to be an alarmist, but I wouldn't take it lightly either. The other thing I would say is I would follow up what Brian says, and I don't mean to be cliche, but to make an analogy, if you're a coach on a team and you have a 2 or 3 4 game losing streak, you'll notice, and you guys all know this, that as you start losing, adversity makes you start to pay greater attention to detail. And I think the silver lining in this crisis is that you have the opportunity, whether you're, Tommy, your staff, or if you're a staff coach, so to speak, you are forced now, and for a significant period of time, whether it's 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, to pay more and more attention to detail, which Brian before was saying is going to make him a better coach. And whether you yourself are a coach, excuse me, or you're running a staff, that's an opportunity to set a culture that could go ongoing. Because I think once you start winning or things get lax, people get lax. And I do believe things are habit forming. So right now it's a good opportunity, like I said, if there's a silver lining in this situation, for you to yourself as well as your staff to start to pay attention to detail and move forward when this is over, to continue to pay attention to detail.
Yeah, I mean, I'm of the mind that, if when we get through this, that everybody's going to have a different perception of, how they treat other people and how they purchase toilet paper. But certainly, I want to see this as an opportunity to get better and do things better. And I'm sure everybody here feels the same. On the technology side, I had some questions for people. Like, I've been using Zoom for a while, and I noticed that it's when it saves it to the cloud, I'll get a notification. It says, okay, your video is ready. It's saved to the cloud. That's taking a lot longer because I assume everybody's using Zoom now for their communication, right? But using FaceTime, Zoom for athlete interactions, are people starting to do that already? Like Ryan mentioned it. And he's very adept at stuff like that. But can you guys see that people will start making this shift now, and then it'll stick? Like Tommy was saying, like he's going to be, coaching his relatives in the park, in New York City. But, that I've thought of that too. What are some better ways to provide information for things to do? I always had my sprinting workout in the prison cell that I've kind of launched on people. Anybody else have any ideas on how they're going to use technology?
I can talk about it.
Okay, Christine, thanks.
So at University of Delaware, we have what's called Teamwork. So it's a communication and kind of like a cloud where we can put files in. So unfortunately, we are patient 0 in Delaware. We had a professor who was the first victim of the virus, and that's now spread to 6 more people. So our university shut down. Wow. We've told all our kids to leave. The dorms are closed unless you have some type of travel issue, especially for international students. So with the Teamworks, I know what Teamworks has done is they've made their application free for anybody. So whether it's a high school, a college, what have you, it's the way to communicate for free. You don't have to pay for the membership now. Obviously, Delaware already had it, so we're paying for it. but it was the easiest way for me to get all of my kids' workout cards to them immediately. So we sent out no access running workouts, you know, calisthenics back in the day, you know, getting the videos out and just having them move. They're on their spring break right now. We moved it up 2 weeks. But what we're going to be doing is we're going to have them fill out a daily kind of survey on what they're doing so we can be aware of if and when we do get back into a regular schedule, we know where they're at, because we have to make sure we're acclimating them correctly back on campus when the student athletes do arrive. And that's number one. This is a huge break for these kids. They've trained all year. They're ready to compete, but now they're done. So our athletes that come back for the fall, we don't know if they've had gyms. So they're going to give us that information. Where have they been working out each week? What have they been doing? Because we can keep an eye on them at the Division I level still. We're not in summer mode where things are voluntary. And then the coaches will obviously send out things for their athletes to do. Probably mainly, I would say, most of our coaches are going to work on leadership skills rather than obviously sports skills, having them adapt and learn to be better servant leaders in their athletic side of things, rather than getting a ball and stick in their hand or a ball and go kick around in their backyard. I think there's other ways that we can look at training our athletes as well than just skill, especially that their seasons are over. So if I'm sending this out to a senior lacrosse player, he's going to be like, I'm not doing this, I'm done. So I think the coaches are going to have a great effect on these kids to make them better individuals in a leadership stance.
All right, that's awesome, Christina. I had a question for you. Did the NCAA come out and say that they're going to grant extended eligibility for seniors?
They did. So if you're a spring sport athlete right now, you receive your spring eligibility. So you will be eligible in 2021 to compete. They have not stated anything on winter sports. So women's basketball, men's basketball, I know indoor track and field championships were literally supposed to happen right now. So they canceled that. I think gymnastics also missed out on their championship season. So winter sports by the NCAA hasn't been determined yet. But the spring athletes, so softball, baseball, and outdoor track, they'll get a year back eligibility-wise.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm just seeing what the ripple effect of that is. If they say you get an extra year, and then how many more athletes do they bring in? Freshmen do they bring in? And how does that change budgets and all that?
Well, that's the problem, because the scholarship money has already been given to the incoming freshmen, in a sense, from these seniors. So what are they going to do? So is the NCAA going to fund that? That's a lot of kids. So I'm not quite sure how that's going to play out. Is it you get your extra year, but you're not funded? Or is the NCAA going to do something with just the academic side? They might not get a stipend. I don't know. That becomes really expensive, especially for those mid-major schools. Some of the SEC schools, they're not even going to see an effect by that monetary wise, but the mid-majors, they're going to have trouble with it. And I think that you'll see a lot of transferring. The transfer portal will be hot.
Yeah, good point. And because they're not raking in tons of cash through March Madness, the NCAA is not going to step up. So that's interesting. Anybody else? It was interesting what Christina was saying about the app. They're giving it away for free now. Do you think that's going to happen a lot? Even Tommy alluded to that. Things will be given away for free during this period, so that once things rebound, now I can pay for it. That was a pretty good experience. What do you think, Tommy?
Yeah, I think so. I heard Zoom is free, I think now, isn't it?
I already paid for my annual subscription, so
I think it's relatively inexpensive, but I think there's probably a time of goodwill, but ultimately we have to pay our bills, everybody at every level, and so eventually that has to kind of run its course.
Yeah. Yeah.
I got a question for Christina or anybody in the college setting. You talk about financial implications with regards to the general student population. Are people asking for a pro rata refund on their room and board?
Yeah, so the university is going to give a reimbursement. They're taking steps to figure out exactly how much they're going to get back. So they have to count the number of days left in the semester, and it's going to be individual based on the kids' food plan too. Some kids might be getting 5 meals paid for, some might be getting like 2. So I think they have to look at it very individually. So that's going to take time. I don't see that happening in the next week. But by the end of the semester, going into the summer, the kids or the parents who are flipping the bill will see a refund. They're also helping students that are displaced, whether it is international travel, but also if you're a foster kid and you have nowhere to go because you're kind of independent on your own, you have no place to live.
Wow. I had a question about even just training types. Like I've seen people on the internet go like, "Oh, geez, don't do aerobic training. You'll just suck in more air, and you'll get your lungs will get infected. So just deadlift." Right? Has anybody seen that stuff? Like like all the people are coming out like, "Yes, just lift weights. Don't do aerobics." Right? For it's not about weight loss or anything. Ryan?
Well, I mean, have you ever noticed that when it comes to the holidays, you get sick, and it's not just because you're trying to avoid your politically incorrect relatives? The reality is like if you have a certain level of work, there's certain athletes that don't peak well when you back way off their training because their body responds in a really inappropriate way. There's some real data proven about that phenomenon where if you back way off of all the things that you're doing, it's going to give you an increased chance of getting sick and your immunity comes down. So for me, it's one of those things. It's like, let's try to be as we can be in our training, understanding that, you can't interact with people probably while doing it. But it's really important that we continue to keep working. So for me, yeah, that's ridiculous. I mean, whatever you can get done, the better. And if you're going to, if you have a stationary bike or a row machine or a Peloton and you haven't been divorced because you got that for your wife over Christmas, like there's a lot of things you can get done. And I think that for all of us, if it does destroy lung capacity, you want your lungs as strong as they can be before you get sick. So it only makes sense to stay as active as you can while practicing social distancing and not participating in large group functions.
Yeah. Has anybody come out with the definitive coronavirus prevention exercise program yet? Or, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But I mean, has anybody, sent out like a different training program than you'd normally do? Like, okay, we know this has been alluded to already by some of you, and okay, you're stuck in your apartment. What are you going to do? Or you're stuck in a confined space. I mean, I would probably do a little more jumps than usual. I don't know. What are people thinking? Any thoughts?
Well, when I put the book together, that talking to the guys at Altus and things like that, like what can you get done in a hotel room? So we have a workout protocol. It's like, hey, you're stuck in your hotel room. Here's a workout you can do just to have your body not be stale coming out of a coronavirus tube at 30,000 feet. So we've done that, and I have not had my athletes per se do that, but that's obviously something that will get done. You could get a lot of plyometrics done. If you got stairs, you could do some depth jumping. I mean, there's all sorts of things you could do if you're being creative. But yeah, I would say that we would have a lot of elastic freaks maybe after this, along with probably a lot of babies too that are going to be probably coming around in about 9 months. So there'll be a lot of interesting adjustments to behaviors. That's for sure.
Yeah, I have these arguments with PJ with Giuseppe Guelli, and he's like, over the last few years we've done like short accelerations. He's like, I think I can do it with 3 steps. He says I can make a good athlete in soccer or ice hockey with just a 3-step acceleration. So it's almost like name that tune. I can name that tune in, or 8-minute abs to 6-minute abs. So yeah, I think there's going to be some interesting innovations coming out. But anybody else have any final comments? I don't want to keep you on here too long, although this is a good way to keep you isolated and from going outside. Rob, you got any final things that you can offer to us in terms of, you know, the next week? What should we look for the next week?
It's going to get worse before it gets better, but I think it's going to get worse before you get better. I think it is going to get better, and I just think you take the necessary precautions that have been advised to prevent yourself and your athletes from getting it. I think you know, you pay attention to the details, you don't take it lightly, and you move forward. You know, the old saying, some decisions we'll make and some decisions will be made for us. And I think with this unknown entity, that's going to be true.
Yeah. Tom Norton, can you jump in? You posted something here, and you know, what's acceptable to tell people to do? Like you said, take a hike and all that, and obviously you have to have guidelines around stuff.
Yeah, if you can hear me.
Yep, we hear you.
You know, we've done exactly that. You know, Derek, you're familiar. My population is de facto a vulnerable population because I spend a great deal of my time with varied age groups of athletes in Special Olympics. Everything is on pause right across the country, including all of our qualifying championships, which we're in that qualifying cycle again for 4 years. Just recently finished the World Championships, just recently finished the National Winter Games in Thunder Bay, Ontario. So as a result of that, we have a few athletes that have come back sick from this event, regrettably, but they've not tested positive for COVID, and they've been tested for that very reason. So we've said exactly that: press pause, but don't stop being active. As an example, throw in your backpack and go for a walk. Getting outside. Our British Columbia Chief Medical Officer has said exactly that. Go and enjoy the outside. Going outside in the bush or the trails or wherever you happen to be is not going to increase your risk of getting infected in this particular virus. It's personal contact with people. And the unfortunate part is, and several on the call have said the same thing, you may or may not know if you have been infected by this particular virus because the testing is so limited in so many regards. The tough part is it does hit vulnerable populations, those that are a little older and immune compromised. And as an example, like I've got a number of athletes that just as a result of their own personal circumstances are immune compromised. So we're just considering everybody is compromised and at risk at this point in time. So
yeah, that's a good point. Just assume everybody has it. Like in British Columbia now, we're having a little nicer weather. It's still a little chilly, but things are blooming, and my hay fever is killing me. So I'm like sneezing and sniffling, and people are looking at me like, what the hell's wrong with you? So it's interesting. Like, you know, people still get sick from other things, but it's so hard to understand, you know, is it the virus? Is it, you know, what should we do? So yeah, the next week is, I hate to say it, my wife's like all over me, like, hey, don't keep looking at the news. Don't keep watching it. It's just going to work you into a lather, a frenzy, right? But, you know, if you guys are like me, if everyone's like me, you want to know. You want to know what the hell's going on, and what is it getting better? Is it getting worse? How should I conduct myself? And you know, I don't know. I like everybody says, this is uncharted territory. I hate to say it too. It's a little exciting. It's a little, you know, you watch the movies and you go, okay, like the zombie apocalypse, and this is the closest bloody thing we've come to. And it's just like, it's a bit of a challenge. I think it's a personal challenge of how you conduct yourself, what measures you take, and it's a bit of a competition too, like, you know, on a survival level. And I know that sounds really strange, but if you want a video gamification interpretation of it, it is a bit like that right now. And who does a good job of that? And from a community point of view, you know, are we all doing a good job to make sure it doesn't spread? Anybody else have any final thoughts before we sign off here and let you go? Tommy, come on. You got to have a final thought here with that beard.
I just think, just thinking in our population, most of us didn't get into coaching to become rich, but really with the mind to make an impact in people's lives. And, if we can be, look at the positives and the things that we can do in this time when, we're being forced to kind of eliminate hurry from our life. There are these opportunities for growth. And if we can stay focused on some of these positives and, just help each other to, look at the, maybe the light at the end of the tunnel and just help us all to stay at a good spot, just healthily, in terms of our mental health and just socially, being able to connect with, loved ones, maybe electronically, outside of our immediate families. I think we need each other, to be positive in this time. So I just encourage us all to try to do that.
Yeah, and thanks for that last word, Tommy. And what I'll do is I'm going to schedule a bunch of these, so hopefully everybody else jumps on and we can talk about actual productive things in terms of training and rehab and all that. But yeah, maybe this is an opportunity for everybody to connect a little bit more. But I think it is a bit of a societal reset. So, I just want to make sure everybody stays safe and keep in touch. And yeah, hopefully we can talk again in a week and just see how everybody's doing. Okay. So thank you very much for jumping on. I appreciate all your contributions, and we'll talk very soon. Take care.
It is there.
Thank you, Derek.
Be safe.
Happy St. Patrick's Day, Derek.
Yeah, that too. Can't lose sight of that.